welcome back to the Black and Raw podcast. I'm your host, Tino Kuda Tondarai Vunzabaya. I'm not going to repeat that. Here is a podcast that is creating the dialogue and the space for black men to be their most authentic selves. Now, my guest today is Mac Scotty McGregor, and Mac comes onto the podcast to talk about masculinity. He's wrote a book called Positive Masculinity, and we discuss some of his childhood experiences and how sort of everything he's done relates back and funnels back into his growth and his journey. He also was a karate sensei. He's done karate since he was 6 years old. You'll find out a bit more about that as well and how that sort of impacted him too. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. I've titled this episode, What Can Karate Teach You About Masculinity? And I really think that sort of encapsulates a lot of what we talk about in this episode. So, before we get started, I wanted to give you guys a snippet. I wanted to give you a snippet of what you've got to look forward to. But before that, I just wanted to say thank you for watching this video. This is first or second YouTube video that I'm going to be doing, releasing these podcasts up here, so I really thank you for watching. Please go and listen to the podcast, or if you're listening on here, even great, and please share it with your friends because it helps this podcast grow. So let me give you a little snippet of what you've got to look forward to in this episode with Mac Scotty McGregor.
I think come with this that people don't think about. People think, oh, they can defend themselves, but more than that, the life skills they take from that they can use, every single day in how they walk in the world, right? I think that's what people should be more amazed about and think more about, not just that they can defend themselves. Yeah, and that's great that they know how to take care of themselves. But more than that, I mean, just think of the confidence that a kid that can do that, walks through the world with. And first of all, if you walk with that much confidence and poise, you're not going to be drawn into a lot of, following your peers down a bad road because you have the confidence to stand on your own 2 feet, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's right. What we have to get to is understanding that success and happiness, neither one of those are pie. In other words, a lot of people come from a scarcity mentality where I think if I give you a piece of pie, there's going to be less pie for me. Right? If we're talking, I have a pie right here. I got my grandmother's peach pie, which I love. But if I share it with you, then there's less pie for me. But happiness and success are not pie. There's enough for all of us. So we have to get out of that scarcity mentality that we think if we share some success and happiness and help others thrive, that it takes away from me. It does not.
Right. So now that you've seen what you're going to listen to, I really should just let you get on with this conversation. But before we get to that, thank you very much for listening. Please go and share and rate the podcast. Go follow me on all social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, @blackandraw, or you can go into my website, www.blackandraw.co.uk. It's not @blackandraw, it's just www.blackandraw.co.uk. But yeah. To the Black and Raw podcast. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you, Tino. It's good to be here.
Oh, that's brilliant. How's your day been? How you been? Where are you in the States again?
I'm in Seattle, Washington. Yeah, okay. up in the northwest corner. Yeah, we've already gotten a little snow this year, which is unusual actually for us.
Oh, I'm jealous, man. I want snow. It's too cold here for it not to snow. Like it's like teasing you. It's like it's freezing, but I don't see any snow.
Yeah, we live in this beautiful area where we're kind of in a bowl and there are mountains all around us. So you can get to ski areas, within an hour.
Yeah.
But we don't usually get much snow down in the lowlands where we are. So yeah, but with climate change, we're getting a little more snow. So
yeah, I guess a positive of climate change and hotter summers.
Yes.
So
it's positive for me, yeah, because I grew up in Florida where I didn't get to play in snow as a kid. So yeah.
Yeah, Florida is I've been before, and the weather there is crazy, to be honest with you. 1 minute it can be warm and then it'll be raining, but it's also still warm as well. And you're like, what just happened here?
Yeah, it is a little wild.
Yeah.
But it's 80 degrees there now. So, while we're cold, it's
Yeah,
nice.
it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, welcome on to the podcast. I would have given a little introduction to my audience, but they're going to get to know much more about you in this episode. And I wanted to start off, I think is a perfect place, sort of in a jumping off point. Is that so you have been involved with karate for quite a majority of your life. And so I guess I just want to find out a bit more about that. Like, when did you start? How have you found sort of being in karate and competitive karate and things like that?
Yeah. Well, I started at 6 years old. My elementary school offered a little after school program that was 6 weeks long. And I signed up for the karate program. They had different programs you could sign up for. And, I had always loved Kung Fu theater on Saturdays as a kid to watch on TV, and loved that stuff. So when they offered a karate program, I jumped on it. And I just took off with it. And at the end of the 6 week program, my teachers, which were a husband and wife team that taught together and owned the dojo, they actually had a prior commitment, and we were supposed to, all of us in every after school program, give a little program for the PTA, for the parents, about what we all learned. And because my instructors couldn't be there, they chose me out of the class to lead the class to show the little demonstration of what we had learned. And here I am, this little tiny 6-year-old, in a little gi, and I'm leading these other kids. And I got a standing ovation. Well, that, that then it was like gold. I mean, of course, part of it was probably because I was so little and it was cute, but uh, but anyway, that gave me the bug, and I just fell in love with it. And so my instructors actually called my mom and grandmother in at the end of the program and told them I was very natural at it and encouraged them to keep me in it. And so my grandparents helped pay for it so that I could do it. And then I became the kid that every night when they had to lock the doors and go home, they had to kick me out and tell me to go home. I just loved it that much. And I just ate it up. So by the time I started competing then in each belt division I was in, and then by the time I was 17, I won the U.S. lightweight. It was called the U.S. Open, which was the big, United States, competition that crowned you basically the champion in the
Yeah.
U.S. for that year. And then things started opening up, and I started traveling and competing more. And then I also started taking other arts. So I have a 4th-degree black belt or above in 17 different arts. So
Wow. I do not want to fight you. I don't know if anyone does.
well, no, but I'm actually the last guy that's gonna, I'm the guy you want to have a beer with, because if something does start, I'm there.
Oh,
And
okay, yeah, yeah, no. You got backup. That's what you always
yeah,
need in a group of
yeah,
friends.
and I'm the last one to start a fight, because with all the knowledge that you have, when you have, now I'm over 50 years in the martial arts. I've been inducted into the Martial Arts Hall of Fame twice. Um, I've had all kinds of awards, all kinds of amazing awards. But the more the less you want to fight on the street, because somebody's going to get hurt, somebody's going to have a bad day, right? And
Yeah.
it's not the kind of guy I am. We don't want to have to use what we know.
Yeah, true. It's in your back pocket in case you need
Right,
it.
right.
Like, it's the epitome of you should have seen what the other guy looked like.
Yes, yes. And there's an old Zen story of an old martial arts master, and he teaches his students, and I've always taught this as well. The best way to win a fight is to not get in a fight.
Mm,
It's outsmarting them, not the physical thing. So it's learning how, part of Aikido, the art of Aikido, which is one of the arts I have a 6th-degree black belt in Aikido. And the art of Aikido literally means the way of harmony. So it's about redirecting the energy of an attack to something else, right? Redirect it to something else. And so, part of that is learning how to navigate where you take somebody who's angry and wants to fight you and wants to start something, and you redirect their energy in a different way so it hopefully can come out in a positive instead of a negative.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds really interesting, actually. And karate is one of always those things that I feel like people watch on TV, or you see Bruce Lee doing it, or Jackie Chan. Even there's the new Cobra Kai series, which I never watched the original Karate Kid, so I don't know if any of the fans of the original ones are going to be like, you can't watch Cobra Kai and not watch the first ones.
Yeah, pretty much. You need to watch the first one. Yeah.
But it always seems quite sort of like a really good sort of activity to get involved in, and a lot of fun as well. Like I don't know, what was some of your like most fun memories in terms of being a part of a karate, being part of karate?
Well, I think you know, I came from a very dysfunctional family. You know, my mom is on her 12th marriage, and my dojo, my karate family became my healthy family. Honestly, so I think the relationships that you build when you train together for that many years, you also see each other during those years through life's up and downs, you know, through family members getting sick, through people having babies, through getting married, through all the big life up and downs, you know, so they become literally family to you. And you know, to this day, there's people that I trained with for many years that now live far away, that if they called, we'd be there for each other in a second. There's just a bond that you build. I think that, you know, it's like a brother and sisterhood thing that you just, it never goes away.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing I think that's the most special about the years of training, because you know, in traditional arts it takes many years. You don't get a black belt overnight. I don't know about where you are, but in America we have these, we call them McDojos. They're like McDonald's karate schools where you drive through and get a belt every 6 weeks. And
Really? That's a
yeah,
thing.
oh, it's awful.
What?
It's just to make money, and there's so many of those.
I
There's so
never
many
heard
of
of
those.
that.
It's been commercialized, you know, because Americans and a lot of Westerners nowadays, they want everything quick. They want everything instant. You know, they want to take a weekend course and get a certificate, right?
Yeah, that's the culture. That's the, you know,
That's right.
rich schemes, the whole thing, the
Yeah.
whole shebang, isn't it?
Oh yeah. The many years I had a commercial dojo. I used to laugh when the first question somebody would ask when they walk in the door is, how long will it take me to get a black belt? I knew they weren't going to last in my dojo
Mm.
because I don't give black belts away fast, right? So you have to be there for years to earn that, you know. And so it's in American culture, people, a lot of people just don't have the patience for that. It's a lifetime thing. It's not a seasonal sport, right?
Yeah,
And it's something that takes a lot of commitment. But it's so worth it. Oh my God, the life lessons you learn and the relationships you build, like I was saying, is just so worth it. I call the martial arts my soulmate because I literally believe, probably as a young person, it probably saved my life because I was a kid with a lot of energy
yeah,
and had a very dysfunctional family. So if I had not found the martial arts, something healthy to put that energy into, I could have been doing who knows what, you know.
yeah, exactly. Like you see those statistics of like, you know, young offenders, and you
Right.
hear the stories, and it's like sometimes they never had that outlet to go
Yes.
and do something. And even you're saying that you had the camaraderie of all your karate peers, like even
Yeah.
just being able to, you know, spar with somebody, but just also chat with them. I imagine you guys would have gone out and done stuff together as
Oh,
a team and stuff.
we did lots of stuff. We traveled to competitions together. We ate dinner together. We did all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it really put that sort of energy that you had into something positive, which yeah,
Yeah.
I think is quite great, to be honest with you.
And I also had the privilege of having really good teachers, you know, along my martial arts you know, career coming up. They were just good people who actually cared about us. And you know, as a kid that came from a dysfunctional family, like I had teachers that kind of took me under their wing and looked out for me. And I really appreciated that too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I always I've had conversations before with people where where I've said it'd be really cool. And I don't know, maybe if this is how God looks at us, but like you can see like if you can see the pinpoint of where someone had an impact on you and the direction that took you instead. Um, like butterfly sort of effect-ish. Like it'd be really interesting to see that. But like as you were saying, you've had mentors and you've had your fellow peers that have helped steer you on sort of a good path as well.
Yeah, and I turned around and tried to do that for other kids, and when I had a dojo too, because I realized how much that impacted my life. And there were also parents, of friends of mine who were competing with me and traveling to these things and at the dojo. My mom was never there and going to my competitions, but they had, most kids had one of their parents at least with them going
Yeah.
traveling with us. And a lot of times these parents would bring an extra sandwich for me or help
Oh.
give me a ride or something because they knew my parents weren't there.
Mm.
And I'll never forget that. And they didn't have to do that, and that just made a big difference in my life.
Yeah, no, that's wholesome. Yeah, and that's amazing. And there's some great people out there.
Yes.
And even something just as small as bringing a little lunch, bringing an extra little lunch for
Yeah.
you, like it's you don't think it's a big thing, but like it just sort of helps. Like I know, like my parents they've came to some of my games before, but then there's also been times where they're working and stuff like that and they can't come, and you always as a kid want to see your parent in the stands.
Yes.
Like even if you know they can't make it and it's generally a good reason, you always sort of are like, oh, I want to look and see if they're there. I don't know, it's quite comforting, isn't it? And I guess they're there
It
to
is.
cheer you on.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of people ask me, they talk to me about, because I have a radio show as well. You're doing this. I have a radio show that I've had for quite a while. It's called the You Can Make a Difference show. And I talk to people who are doing things to make a difference in the world and in our communities. And a lot of people think you have to do some big, huge thing. And like you're saying, the small things like bringing an extra lunch for a kid who doesn't have somebody there to do that for them, giving a kid a ride that doesn't have a parent there with them. I mean, it doesn't have to be a huge thing to make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
we can all
definitely.
we can all do it, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I'm definitely gonna put your what do you call it? Your radio show in the show notes. I want to listen to some as well because I didn't know what it's called, but yeah, I really like sort of just what it's about.
Yeah.
And as I said, you can make a difference in so many sort of small things and small ways,
Yes.
which is brilliant. What was it like running your own dojo, and how long did you do that for?
Well, for 25 years, I had a big commercial dojo. I mean, I did the huge, I had a 3,500 square foot with and vans picking kids up after school and the whole deal.
Oh yeah, that
Uh,
Cobra Kai stuff you did.
yeah, yeah, I did, and there's days I miss that, but it's like a 24/7. You hardly ever get any time off when you own a business like that. So um, and it was actually amazing because of course your students and their families become part of your family, and you watch these kids grow up that you teach, and you're literally like a family member of theirs, because I had kids from some of them from the time they were like I started 5 and 6 till they got their black belt, till they were graduating from high school, and then stayed with me after that, and now sometimes I get to meet their kids.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing to be a part of their lives like that, where you've had a huge impact, and then you get to watch their whole life unfold before you.
Yeah, quite a full circle moment that is, isn't it? Sort of seeing
Sure
kids when
is.
they're younger, and then, I remember I was doing my placement for social work, and I used to learn guitar when I was a kid, and it was a church member that was there that was teaching, and I must have been around 6, 7. And then I saw him again when I was 24, and like he was just like, wow, this is weird. Like you're in my place of work and I literally saw you as a kid. Like
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And it's a privilege. I will say it's a privilege to get to be a part of their story, a part of their lives, and somebody who has had an impact on them, and then how they turn around and parent. They parent with some of the lessons you've helped pass on to them, which is really cool.
yeah, no, that is really amazing. And so I guess in terms of karate, and sort of what you've seen throughout the years, What would you say, which I'm quite interested by, is something that um people might be surprised about doing competitive karate and competing and, as you said, in going to different places in the world and stuff like that. Like, what's something people don't really think about or understand, would you say?
Hmm. Well, I think that people don't understand, especially when we're talking about kids, the pressure that it takes, because karate is not something where you're out there, with a bunch of teammates at once, right? Even though you have a team you usually go there with from your dojo, when you're competing, you're usually on the floor by yourself against one other competitor. And so the pressure that that takes and the poise that it takes for, I watch 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 year olds, hold it together in a stadium full of people when they're the lone person out there, you know what I mean? In front of all those people, and they hold it together with such grace and poise that I think people need to have more respect for that, and what that, how that prepares them. Oh my God, if a kid can do that at 7, 8, whatever, think of how that prepares them to face things in the world as they go into adulthood. I mean, they know how to command a room
Mm,
at 7 and 8 years old, or whatever. There's some amazing skills that I think come with this that people don't think about. People think, oh, they can defend themselves, but more than that, the life skills they take from that they can use, every single day in how they walk in the world, right? I think that that's what people should be more amazed about and think more about, not just that they can defend themselves. Yeah, and that's great that they know how to take care of themselves. But more than that, I mean, just think of the confidence that a kid that can do that, walks through the world with. And first of all, if you walk with that much confidence and poise, you're not going to be drawn into a lot of, following your peers down a bad road, because you have the confidence to stand on your own 2 feet, right?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's quite a good sort of life skill to be able to have in your bag, isn't it? As a kid,
yes,
yeah, and even to sort of, because it's scary, sort of being,
it
everyone's
is.
looking at you. You've got to perform. If your parents are in the stands, you want to make them proud, but you also want to do your best as well. And
There are
it,
judges judging you. Yes.
yeah, exactly. There's people taking photos of you, and
Right.
it probably can be quite a lot for a young person, for a young child. So I think, yeah, to be
Definitely.
able to go out and do that, is definitely top tier, really.
It is. Yeah.
How would you say, I guess, because you've been through all of that, how would you say that's impacted you?
Oh.
And how did you sort of deal with that pressure as well?
Well, I trained so much that I got a lot of the um, stress of it out in training, right? Because I was just like I said, I never would go home. If they
Mm.
let me stay there 24/7, I probably would have stayed lived at the dojo.
Made a little bed in the corner, just
That's
shacked
right.
up.
Yeah, give me a cot, I'm fine. Yeah. Um, but I think that helped a lot, and the camaraderie. Also, talking about those things. The dojo I grew up in, we were very close, and we actually talked about those things, dealing with those things, and helped each other through them. But I think the maturity it gave me at a very young age, um, you know, I couldn't put a price on it. My goodness. I mean, I became in leadership in everything I did after that.
Mm,
Pretty young. Like I was I also went to college on a basketball scholarship. I was team captain of every team I played anything on. I was like in leadership in school, and like everything I did, it propelled you down a road where you stood out, because you had that poise and that grace and could command a room and knew how to lead. Because one of the things that martial arts also does that I think is very valuable is, as soon as you learn something, it doesn't matter what belt you are. So everybody starts as a white belt, right? And then most
mm,
schools have a yellow belt next, or something light like that. And then, but as soon as you're at the next belt, you turn around and you're helping the belt under you with
yeah.
what you know. You're helping them prepare to get the belt you have, right? You're helping them learn the things to get the belt you have. Every step of the way, part of what you learn is to turn around and give back with what you know to someone else. If you have good teachers, which I think is such a valuable tool as well, you learn not to just hoard that for yourself. You learn the importance of giving back when you have knowledge or you have something to share, right? And that's a skill that I think is just another skill that's invaluable that you learn from good martial arts training.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And a lot of these stuff that you're talking about, which I think are amazing skills, I think everybody definitely should have. I also feel like though they're quite they're skills which are usually attributed to men. That you have to be leadership, you have to be able to control a room, and you have to, be able to grab everybody's attention. And so I guess for somebody that has written a book about masculinity, do you see what I did there, guys?
Yes.
I guess for you were able to sort of develop a lot of these skills. And so I guess I wanted to sort of ask, could you tell my audience a little bit about your book? And we'll also sort of get into the nuances of it as well.
Sure. The book is called Positive Masculinity Now. And, basically, I think we've been lied to about a lot of things in our, what I call our gender socialization. And I'm not just talking about men, I'm talking about everyone has been told stories about what we should and shouldn't do because of our gender at birth, right? I mean, because women are given limitations as well, right? Girls shouldn't do that, or girls should act like this and not that. There's all these messages, right? And so what I get people to do in this book is to go back and re-examine the messaging that you got around your gender and the modeling you had, the way people modeled how to be a man or a woman or what in your life, and re-examine that as a conscious adult and figure out what serves you well today from that modeling and messaging and what does not. For instance, I'll give an example of someone that I taught martial arts to. One of my students, who was a girl, is a girl. When she was a little girl, she wanted to take martial arts.
Yeah.
And her parents told her that's not for girls. Now, she's in her 50s now, so this was a while back, right?
Just a bit.
But her parents were very traditional, but they told her that's not for girls. And so she had to wait until she left home for college, and her college offered a martial arts class that she signed up for. Now she went to college away from home, right? So she was
she had to. She had to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how she started her martial arts training. Now, she became a really good martial artist and is now a really great martial arts teacher. But she would have never known that if she would have listened to that messaging and taken that as, as what it, as that's the way it has to be, right? And so we all get limiting messaging around our gender and our socialization that I'm just saying, look, as adults, we can re-examine that and decide if that's still good for us. Think of all the men that are great chefs. If they were told when they were young, men shouldn't be in the kitchen, they might have never become a great chef, right?
Yeah, we wouldn't have no Gordon Ramsay swearing at people
That's
on
right.
TV or Jamie
Emeril
Oliver.
Lagasse's or whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because those traditional gender roles, well, first of all, they're ridiculous. Activities don't have a gender.
Yeah.
I mean, when you put it that way and you think about it, get people to really think, does an activity have a gender? Well, no.
No, not really. It's only what we say it does, isn't it, really?
That's right. It's socialization. So that's one of the big things I talk about in the book is that it's really ridiculous. If you like doing something and enjoy doing something, you should be able to do it. It doesn't matter what your gender is.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy when we think about it. Like, it's I was thinking while you were talking, I was like, yeah, children get like subliminal messages. It's not even subliminal sometimes it's straight up just you can't do this because of your gender.
Right.
And I mean, for the story that you told about that woman as well, like it would have been quite sad if she had actually never even went and tried it, because a lot of people would have been
That's
like,
right.
oh, I got told it wasn't for me, so I'm not gonna try it out. And you've missed out on a huge opportunity, a big chunk
That's
of
right.
your life, which
Yeah.
is because someone had literally said, no, you can't do this because you're a boy or a girl. Which,
Right.
can
And
you
you
give me
think
the
how many
evidence?
people have done that, have missed out on
Mm,
things because of that kind of old messaging, you know? Yeah. I
yeah.
just think we should take away the limits that that messaging gives us, you know? It's also look at men and look at the fact that we're told we're not supposed to be, for instance, nurturers. It's a woman's job to be the nurturer, right? And how many guys, you know, have a want to nurture their kids or their nieces and nephews, want to be more loving and with their nieces and nephews and their children and the grandchildren, but they have this old messaging in their head that it shows weakness if they're very nurturing. And I think that impedes our relationships with the children in our lives.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you see examples of where men aren't sort of caring and nurturing towards their children because they never saw their dad do it, like
Right,
because of sort of those
exactly.
subliminal messages, so sort of those messages that are being told. And just like how you said that we need to examine our role models and the people that are around us. Well, if you're never modeled a dad that's caring and kind, you
Yeah,
don't know how to do that. You don't know sometimes where to even start at that point, do you?
that's right. You watch some men and they see their adult son and you watch them shake their hand, and that just I just shake my head right away because I know that dad or grandfather, whatever, he had the kind of modeling you're talking about where his dad wasn't able to be loving to him. Why wouldn't you hug your own son?
Mm,
You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. But that's that old messaging that that he's a big guy now, so I'm not supposed to hug him.
yeah, we all
Right?
love a
I'm
hug,
your
man. Come
son.
on.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And we all know, I mean, we are meant to be the way we are wired and created, we're meant to be beings that are in close connection. We're pack animals. We're pack animals. We're meant to be in close connection.
Mm,
And even doctors tell us now we're supposed to have so many hugs a day for our health, our physical health. It actually gives us better physical health. Hugs lower our blood pressure. They raise our hemoglobin rates. It does all kinds of physical, there's all kinds of physical benefits just to healthy hugs. And yet we have this barrier as men because we're not supposed to be tender. We're not supposed to, it's crazy.
yeah, it fully is crazy, and it's just unfortunate, isn't it, for some people that sort of are still stuck in that sort of I can't do this because I'm a man, I can't do this because I'm a woman, because as we said, the opportunities you're missing out on, even the health benefits you're missing out on,
Right.
like
Yeah.
because you don't want to give a hug to your son, or you don't want to, show tender and compassionate. It's
Or
like,
your brother, or your
yeah,
brother.
or
I
brother,
do the same
yeah,
thing with brothers, Yeah, it's weird.
exactly. Like, even just there's like in like Sweden or Stockholm, or I think one of some of those Nordic countries, they have I think men and women have the same paternity and maternity leave, or that men can take the same amount. And I know I've had conversations with people where they're like, why do men need to take out X amount of time for paternity leave? But it's like, one, you can support your wife while she can take a break, you know what I mean, or your
Right.
partner. But
Yeah.
then also, like, you want to spend, I like, for me, I want to spend time with my kids. Like,
Right.
I want to be
Yeah.
holding him, I want to be chatting nonsense to him, even though he can't understand me. But
Yeah,
like,
you want to be bonding with them.
yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah, it's so important. I think that should be all over the world, that it should be equal, and we should encourage men to do that.
yeah, no,
One of
100.
one of the things I love about when I moved to Seattle, because Seattle is a much more liberal area than I grew up with
Mm,
in Florida, and I saw men here. I don't remember what they call that wrap, where people wrap the baby to their chest, but they take material and wrap the baby, where they're stuck to your body, to your chest.
mm,
But it's the first time I ever saw men do that with their infant wrapped to their chest here. I've seen many women do that all over the world, but I'd never seen men do that till I was here. And I just thought it was one of the most beautiful things that here's these bro dads with beards and everything, and they're pushing a stroller, but they got the baby wrapped to their chest. And I just thought it was actually such a beautiful, to me, expression of fatherhood. It's just, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I've never seen that before, but I mean, I hope to see it one day. I mean, I'm also gonna do it as well. But yeah, and I'm sure there's so many. I'm sure you could go to doctors and you could even find out the benefits for the child of how
Oh,
that sort of helps
sure.
being connected to the father and building that connection too.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I mean, science can prove a lot of things, and
Mhm.
sometimes we don't go and seek out information that disagrees with us.
That's so true, right? Yeah, and nowadays you can find almost anything, right? If you look hard enough, you'll find somebody that agrees with you.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Opinions don't need to be challenged these days, even though they need to be challenged even more.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, they do. Yeah, they definitely do. I think, one of the things that I always tell people is, if anybody tells you they have all the answers, including me, which I never I never will be that egotistical to think I have all the answers. I'm always going to be a student of life as well. I teach, but I'm a student too.
yeah,
If anybody says they have all the answers, run like hell, because none of us do. We're all still learning and figuring it
yeah, 100%. Yeah, they say the more you know, the less you know, isn't
out.
it?
Always.
Like you
Yeah.
find out more, and you're like, oh damn, like you're learning every day.
Yes.
You're learning every day.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that we have to do, and what I'm doing in my book, and the hardest thing that we have to do, is the unlearning of messages that don't serve us well, that are just, that are just not healthy for us.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the hard part. That's the work, isn't it?
Sure is.
Um, was there stuff that you had to unlearn about your own masculinity? I think the expression says it all.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in the Bible Belt in the South, there was a lot of messages that were very, very old fashioned, very traditional, that I had to like work through,
Yeah,
and I mean, it was a constant. First of all, I grew up with constant messaging that women are not equal,
mm,
you know, um, and that is just ridiculous. Um, you know, it was always, that the man is the head of the house, and women are not equal, and it was that kind of messaging. And I mean, to the point where, a lot of I had people, in my life saying, I mean, from the pulpit of the church, women need to just listen to whatever the man says, even if what he says is awful.
yeah.
They didn't give any, only if he's saying good things. They
No
didn't even say
disclaimer, just yeah.
that. Yeah, so yeah, I had to work through that, but I never really bought into that messaging. I always thought it didn't seem right to me.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
definitely.
I mean, if we're all created, supposedly they would talk out two sides of their mouth to me. If we're all created in God's image, then why why aren't we all, treated the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, quite contradictory, isn't it?
Yes.
Um, how would you, I guess, in writing positive masculinity, what were some of the experiences you sort of had to digest and be able to put onto page, that were in the book, or things that sort of stood out to you, and you're like, when you're thinking back to it, you're like, wow, damn, like, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think, I did a really deep dive into the study of binary systems, like male, female, like black, white,
mm,
like the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the poor. We could go on and on about binary systems and how they're used to separate people, how they're systems that don't bring us together as a community or society. They're used to pit one against the other.
Yeah.
You know, that, the more I dove into the research of how that's used, and used by dictators, and it's used by people in power that want to keep their power.
Oh,
They'll
they know how
keep
to use
certain
it.
groups of people down by
Yeah.
using these systems, right? That really stood out to me as like, wow. I mean, and we're watching it in our political system in the U.S. I mean, and in many other areas of the world. There's a lot of places that are seeing an uptick in this binary type political system, that's pushing one against the other, and actually vilifying people that are the other. Instead of just saying we have a few differences, where you used to be able to have a conversation about it. Now these systems are pushing it to the point where you're making the person that's a little different, like, you're saying they're evil and they're bad and they're
Yeah.
it's awful.
Yeah, it is. And as you were saying, you can see it everywhere in the world, as you were saying, with the US politics. You've got Democrats and Republicans, and you've got one extreme over the other extreme. And even here in England, when we had Brexit, you had people that were on for Brexit, people that didn't, and like that caused divisions within families. And I even remember having debates with my families about it, and it can become quite heated. And I mean, we never sort of exchanged words, but I'm sure there were politicians that were exchanging words about each other, saying, "Oh, you did this, you were that, and this." It's not constructive really
Right.
for dialogue or for having positive relationships, is it? Like, it just sort of degrades that, because neither side feels valued, so they're never
Mhm.
going to come to the table, are they?
That's true. When I was young, growing up in school, we used to have debate class we had to take, and I think that was a very valuable part of my education, because we learned to take a subject and actually study the subject and debate it, but not get personal about it. Like, you don't
Mm.
attack the person that has a different idea. You stick to the subject you're debating, and you debate the different sides of the subject. And that's not what's happening in most of our political systems now. People are attacking the person and getting really nasty to the person instead of sticking to the subject, right?
Yeah.
And they're also spreading false information, which, we live in this world of, you have to be able to really dive in and do your research to know what's true, even, that you hear.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, it's a crazy time we live in, definitely. And I guess you're mentioning sort of when you're younger, and I wanted to sort of understand, I guess, how your masculinity has sort of changed over time, or sort of how you've defined it for yourself over time, and how that's changed.
Yeah. um well, I think I had to dive into, there's a lot of us that think, what is it to be a man, right? I mean, I had to dive into that to write this book too.
Yeah.
What does it mean? What does masculinity even mean? Right? It's a way you feel inside. But more than that, I want to know, what does it mean to be a good man?
Yeah.
Right?
There's a
I didn't want
difference.
to
There's a
just be a
difference.
masculine person. I want to be a good man. Right? There's a difference, right? So yeah, I had to dive into that. So I think, one of the things that I realized is using our privilege as men to lift other people up is so important, and that we do have a privilege there, right? And if we're secure in who we are, it doesn't take anything away from us to lift up women, right?
Mm.
Or to lift up people that are non-binary. It doesn't take anything away from us. And I think that's a message I've held on to, is, and I teach men all the time, is that really, if we're secure in who we are, it doesn't hurt us to lift others up.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, you've got to be secure in yourself, isn't it? Because some people then feel like, oh, if I'm, lifting this person up, I'm not being lifted up. But then that's not the way to look at it, is it? Because you just got to sort of be honest. I guess you also have to be honest with yourself as why are you doing this as well? Because you can sort of
That,
have your ulterior motives. But I think lifting each other up and sort of it's quite community based, isn't it? It's bringing
sure.
everybody along and bringing everybody with you. And I guess some of the skills that you said that you were learning with karate is that once you would upgrade on a belt, you would bring others up with you and you'd be
That's right.
teaching them and you'd be helping them. And yeah, I think as you said, it doesn't take anything away from you at all.
Mm.
I think even in, I guess, like in specific of karate, like if you're teaching others, you're also learning even more at the same time. And
Right.
you can
Yes,
see
sir.
what, and people can teach you things as well. So like I think
Ah,
bringing others up is always something that has a positive benefit for everybody involved, really.
that's right. What we have to get to is understanding that success and happiness, neither one of those are pie.
Mm.
In other words, a lot of people come from a scarcity mentality where I think if I give you a piece of pie, there's going to be less pie for me. Right? If we're talking, I have a pie right here. I got my grandmother's peach pie, which I love. But if I share it with you, then there's less pie for me. But happiness and success are not pie. There's enough for all of us.
Mm.
So we have to get out of that scarcity mentality that we think if we share some success and happiness and help others thrive, that it takes away from me. It does not. In fact, it makes our whole community healthier.
Yeah, it fully does. It fully does. I really liked that analogy and sort of like not looking at it as like a scarcity mentality, like looking at it as a not looking at it as a pie, but people think about it as a pie. It's like, no, if I lose my slice, then I don't get a slice. We all
Yes.
love the
Yeah.
slices.
That's
Um,
right.
but yeah, I think it's a really good way to sort of look at that in terms of how we can bring others along and bring others with us too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely, when you mentioned, I think martial arts definitely does teach. Like I said, if you come from a good dojo, it teaches a community mentality as well, which is really a valuable lesson. And it's something that I think that we don't have enough of nowadays because individualism has been pushed so much, right? That be who you are, be your individual self, which it can turn into something that's not healthy for community. Yes, we should each celebrate who we are.
Could you repeat what you said? It just the Zoom flipped off for a second.
Sure, sure. Yeah. If I think individualism has been going crazy to the point of we want everybody to be and celebrate who they are as an individual, but not at the expense of losing track of community and that we're a part of a community and that our community is healthier when we're all doing well. And there's room for us all to be our individual self and have our uniqueness, but we have to remember we're part of this community too. And we want our communities to be healthy and thrive.
Yeah, no, we really do. We really do. Um, and I wanted to sort of go back to your book and just sort of explore sort of maybe what were the responses from people when you did release your book? Like what had people said to you? And I guess what was also the intended impact that you wanted it to have?
Mm. Well, I got a lot of really wonderful responses early on from college professors, and I speak at a lot of colleges, and I had a lot of kudos and telling me, this is great. Somebody needs to speak out more about this. Uh, we need positive masculine role models, and thank you for doing this. And I've also had um, men reach out to me from all over the world, like that have been reading. That's one of the really interesting things that happens when you publish a book, is it just can trickle out everywhere to all kinds of places that you don't expect, right?
Mm,
Like I had a guy from Yugoslavia write to me and ask if he could jump on a Zoom call with me. And he had told me he read my book and he was just blown away by it. And he wants to start a positive masculinity men's group in Yugoslavia because there's such a need for this there.
Yeah.
And, those kinds of things that you would never expect, right? That are just wonderful. And so I've also had a lot of guys say to me, yeah, we need more spaces like you're creating in your men's group. We have a monthly positive masculinity group, virtual group that anyone can join from anywhere. And we have a different discussion topic each month. But what we've done is create a safe space for men to get together and talk about real stuff that's going on with them where they're supported. They're not ridiculed or made fun of for having feelings or, you know, or anything that's going on. It's a
Mm.
supportive place where we're all there to help each other grow and thrive. And I think there just aren't many spaces like that. A
No.
lot of times men are blown away by the fact that when they come, usually their first time they're kind of quiet and watch. And then somebody says something pretty vulnerable and they'll watch how the group responds and supports them. And then they're like, you can see on their face, they're like blown away by this. And then after they see that a few times, then they'll feel like they can open up and share something going on with them.
Yeah.
Think of all the grief in the world. Like, think of how many people we've lost through this pandemic, that people have lost family members. There's been a lot of pain that's happened through that, and then all the grief that people are carrying that they don't have a safe space to talk about, especially men, because men tend to hold and so I think a lot of men long for a space like that. It takes them a little while to trust it, but they're happy that it's there once they come. And I just, my goal is with putting the book out is for more men to find that there are spaces like ours where they can be supported by other guys, and more men to realize the importance of being able to talk about what you're feeling, because there's a very high suicide rate among middle-aged men and depression rate. And I think that some of that is because of that messaging that men grew up with, that we're supposed to hold our feelings in and we're not ever supposed to talk about it if we're sad or depressed or down or whatever, and that has a toll on our mental health over time.
Yeah, it definitely does. And, as we've mentioned in this conversation as well, if you compound that with you not getting any hugs, when all you really need to do is get a hug from your bro, and you
Yeah,
just need to cry a little bit. But if you've been told, no, that's not what you're supposed to do, it just compounds everything that's going on as well. And
sure.
I didn't even think about sort of the grief that people are going through after COVID, and men are not able to talk about that, because that's actually huge. Like, we went through a life-changing event, and if you
Yeah,
can't talk about it, then where is it supposed to come out? You know what I mean? It will come out
right.
in something maybe violent, maybe sad, maybe harmful to yourself or to others.
That's right. And I think that that's where some of the violence that we see in the world comes from, is because men have been told since they were little to stuff those feelings down, and they're going to come out in one way or another at some point. And sometimes they come out in our health, you know, cancer or heart attack or whatever, right? Because it's going to come out. And sometimes, unfortunately, it comes out in you taking it out on family members, domestic violence, or unfortunately, some of these horrific acts where somebody goes out and hurts people in a public place. And
Yeah.
so I think we have to. That's part of my push to this messaging, and just changing um, the way people see masculinity is actually embracing vulnerability is something that we're told as men is a woman's thing, right?
Yeah.
uh, they don't actually say it to us out loud. They just start telling you to stop if when you're young and you show vulnerability, right?
Yeah. They nip it in the bud straight away. They just nah, sorry.
Yeah, exactly, that's right. And so what I realized the other day, I did a TikTok talk on this. Yeah, we have a Positive Masculinity Now TikTok channel you can look at.
I'm
if you're on
definitely gonna look
TikTok.
that up. Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things I realized is, in order for me to have anything that I want in life, I've had to embrace vulnerability. So to win a competition, I had to put myself on the line out in front of a bunch of people. I could have lost, I could have gotten hurt, and sometimes I did.
Mm.
But that's embracing vulnerability. That's pretty vulnerable to put yourself out there like that, right? In order to fall in love, you have to embrace vulnerability because you
Yeah.
could be rejected,
Yeah.
right?
True.
In order to have close friendships, you have to embrace vulnerability to be real with someone else because they might reject you, or they might tell you you're crazy or whatever, make fun of you, right? Everything that we want in life and everything that we've accomplished in life, we've had to embrace vulnerability to have it. And so vulnerability is actually, it's courageous. And we need to realize that and reframe our thinking around vulnerability. Anything that you embrace vulnerability to do that, because that's scary and it can fail.
Yeah, definitely. It is scary, isn't it? Putting yourself out there is terrifying.
Right.
But you've as you've said, all the opportunities you've had have came because you have been able to do that.
Yeah. And it's, I think, us realizing that, just reframing that messaging in our head. So, it is vulnerable. It is embracing vulnerability to talk about our feelings. My wife and I walked two family members through their cancer journey during COVID.
Mm.
Her younger sister and another family member, and we were their caretakers. And so we had to walk them through that, and both of them passed away during that. And that was hard, and I, for the first time in my life, actually sat with the grief of that. And as a caretaker, you're going through a lot of hard things, up and downs, and I actually publicly talked about the grief because I felt it was so important, not only for my own health, but for men to see another man actually being real and talking about grief and how hard it is.
Mm.
And I had a lot of people reach out to me and thank me for that. And just, I think when one of us is willing to do that, it opens the door for more people to realize they can do it too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry for your loss as well.
Thank you.
That definitely must have been a hard time for you and your wife. And condolences to your wife as well. And yeah, and thank you for being vulnerable with me as well right here. Because yeah, it's a courageous act. And you've got to sort of push through the fear of, oh, I'm gonna be rejected, or I'm gonna look stupid, or because at the end of the day, it's stopping you from moving on, or stopping you from progressing to the next thing, or even just your overall health. So vulnerability is huge. And I don't think we will never not stop talking about it, because there's men that have had fathers that are not vulnerable, grandfathers who are not vulnerable, and then they're not vulnerable, and then they have kids that are not vulnerable. So we need to keep repeating the message until it gets into the
Yeah,
ears, into the hearts of people.
that's so true. When it's been generational like that, the messaging, it takes some time to change it, right?
Mm.
And it takes a lot of us, like, being willing to be public about it and speak up, because it's not easy to change things like that, of the stoicism, that's been going on for generations.
Yeah,
We to break that chain is going to take some work.
definitely. I just wanted to ask you two more questions.
Sure.
And I've loved this whole conversation that we've had. So thank you very much. I guess, what does masculinity mean to you?
Mm. Well, to me, masculinity is a way I feel inside. And as someone who teaches gender and has really done a deep dive into examining the messaging we have around gender, if we weren't taught all the things we were taught, I don't know that we would even be able to define masculinity or femininity. We're taught from very young what those things are, right?
Mm.
Because even before we come out of the womb, people are choosing colors for us, toys for us,
Yeah, yeah,
clothes
true,
for us
true, true.
around what they think femininity and masculinity are, right? So it's very ingrained in us from the time from the time we even enter the world.
Yeah,
I think it's masculinity is different for everyone. I don't say I would be able to define it. I call it masculinities, and now there are quite a few gender educators that are saying there's not one way to be masculine or one way to be feminine. It's a spectrum,
yeah,
just like sexuality is a spectrum. Most people understand that now. Gender is a spectrum. I mean, when you think about it, there's everyone from the most macho guy you can think of, like the Terminator, Rocky
yeah.
Balboa. You can go on all these tough guys, right? The
The
Rock.
Rock, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
To Fred Rogers. Those are very, very different forms of masculinity.
yeah. Or even
And yet,
Prince.
and Prince, yeah, and David Bowie, we can go on, you know, and yet they're all valid forms of masculinity. So there's no right or wrong way to be masculine or feminine. That's the way I tell a lot of people. The same thing with women. There's some women that are very high fem, and some women somebody has an aunt that can fix. She's the one that can fix your car when it breaks down. Right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's all just different ways of being.
Yeah, it
Right?
is. And we all need those different ways of being. You if you've got the aunt that can fix everything, great. There's no issue with
Yeah.
that. Like it's a
Right.
plus
That's
side, it's
right.
a bonus, isn't it?
Yes. We all have our gifts, and our gifts really, I don't think we're only taught that they're supposed to be genderized.
Mm,
I don't think they're supposed to be genderized, right? Mind sees patterns and can fix things, easily. You have a mechanical mind. That doesn't have to do with your gender. That's just
it's just how
that's
your
your
brain
gift.
works. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's just
great.
what you've got.
That's right.
No,
Yeah.
100%. And so before we end this conversation, there's always a question I always ask my guests. But say if there's a young boy, young man that's listening to this conversation, how can what we've talked about help them with an understanding of themselves or of their own masculinity, would you say?
Yeah. The thing I would say to a young person that's trying to figure out their masculinity is is to be yourself. Start a journal, write down your feelings, let them out, don't hold them in. We all know that young people, there's young people that are a little different a lot. There's a high suicide rate, and a high depression rate. And I think part of that is, especially with masculine young people, is that they're policed by other boys right away if they're different or show their feelings. You've got to get that out. You've got to find somebody safe to talk to, somebody, and try to find a group that will celebrate you for who you are, and let that be your inner circle. I mean, just think of Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, when he was young. He had to be very different and probably was picked on because he wasn't a tough guy. He was an intellectual guy who was very tender, right? And look how he became this amazing icon later in life. But when he was young, I'm sure that was hard,
Yeah.
you know? And so find those people that will celebrate you for who you are, and hang around with those people. And don't worry about the ones that stay away from the ones that are giving you a hard time for being different, because everybody, Prince, David Bowie, everybody we think of that we look at now as icons. Lady Gaga talks about how she was picked on when she was young for being different. I mean, just think about that. All these people that we look at now that are amazing, it wasn't easy when they were young because they were pushed to conform, and they were different. And it's okay to be different. My gosh, those are, gifts that you can use to do great things. So, yeah, find people that support that. And I do think journaling is important because I do think we need a place to get those feelings out.
Yeah, definitely. I vouch for everything that you've said in that. And thank you very much, Mac, for coming on to the podcast. I have really enjoyed talking to you. And yeah, I hope we can do it again, a possibility. Because yeah, I've enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
I hope we can hang out in person sometime.
Oh, definitely. Like I said, we're going to the pub, and you got my back.
Yes, let's
So
do it. I look forward to it. Yes.
Brilliant. So yeah, thank you very much, Mac. I hope you have a good day.
Thank you.
So, that is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for getting to the end of this. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed talking to Mac. Obviously, we made a lot of Karate Kid and Cobra Kai references in this. Sort of appropriate, right? Sort of appropriate. But, you know, I think it was really interesting listening to Mac and getting his life story and understanding sort of how karate maybe even saved him as a kid. To be honest with you, as you said, as we're talking about, he had a lot of energy, and he didn't have the most stable background. He didn't have the most stable home. So, you know, his karate family was someone that was really important to him. So, I really am glad that that is how life worked out for him. But also, I'm glad that karate was able to do that for him. So, I think we can all take a little bit of that. To be honest with you, that you know, just think about sort of what you can do. If I don't know, if you're getting bored and you're thinking, no, that's gonna be a bad one. That's gonna sing a rubber shop. But no, but if you've got lots of energy and you've got nowhere to put it, and maybe your family isn't the best, then try and look at things that you can do outside of that, because you can get a second family, like Scotty was saying. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to this episode. Next week there'll be another episode, and then the week after, but the one after that. It's only 3 episodes per month. But that all had been in my first video, which I should have watched. So, anyway, I'm just chatting nonsense here. Let me get going. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk soon.